Hello and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. Today I was going to go through the major transits or Gochara for September of 2022, but I would say that the major story here is about the journey from head to heart. So here we go. Just a note before I get too far along, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support. And then I would go ahead and read the rest of this note here. So here's a rundown of dates that are going to be important for Vedic astrology in September, this upcoming month. So just as a reminder, on the 20th of August, so a couple weeks ago, Mercury entered Virgo, or Kanya, as it's known in Sanskrit, and it's going to stay there until October 22nd. So that's important because that's a really important sort of background piece. And Mercury is going to be, I think, the main player here for most of September. So it's important to know that Mercury is already in Virgo with the rest of these dates. In any case, September 9th, tomorrow, Mercury goes retrograde, or Valkyrie. We'll talk about what that means. And then the day after that, we're going to have a full moon in Aquarius, or Kumbha. On the 15th of September, Venus goes Kambas, or Asta, and that's going to be until December 1st, which is a really long time, actually. And then September 16th, Sun enters Virgo to join Mercury in its own sign, and it's going to stay there for about a month. And then the day after that, Mercury goes Kambas, and it's going to be Kambas until the end of September. Then September 24th, Venus enters Virgo also to join the party, and then it's going to stay there until October 18th. The day after that, September 25th, there's going to be a new moon in Virgo, so the moon is going to be joining this big party of Mercury, Sun, Venus on September 25th, and then the day after that, we're going to have a planetary war between Mercury and Venus. And Venus will be the winner, but planetary war is bloody for both sides, even if you end up winning. So keep that in mind. Also, just so you know, Vedic astrology generally emphasizes slow-moving planets. So Jupiter, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu. Those planets are not moving this month, so we are going to be talking about the faster-moving planets. But again, there's going to be just the focus here of all these planets sort of conjoined in one sign. That's going to be important. Yeah. So let's talk about Mercury first, because that's really the sort of stage that's being set here for September. August 20th, as I mentioned, Mercury entered Virgo, or Kanya. Virgo is ruled by Mercury, so that's its own sign. That means it's Swa in Sanskrit. And being in its own sign gives a planet primary strength. So it acts very strongly and prominently because it sort of, walks around its own house. It's very comfortable there. Yeah, there's no negotiating that has to happen or compromising that has to. It can just full out be itself. The thing though about Virgo is it's an earth sign. Mercury also rules Gemini, which is an air sign. So Virgo being an earth sign, Virgo is really usually all about getting things done in physical reality. It's a very practical sign. And because it's a Mercury ruled sign, Virgo is also a dual sign. So there may be two storylines going on here throughout the month. Virgo people, so people who have a Virgo ascendant or Lagna or rising sign, these are all words for the same thing. They tend to be really interested in like health and cleanliness. They tend to be detail oriented because Mercury is detail oriented. Yeah, that's kind of the nature of Virgo. So especially like September, I always think of as sort of Virgo time. When we're trying to kind of, get the kids on their schedule and get into the fall routine and, maybe start, cleaning out the garage or something to get ready for winter after summer's over, that sort of thing. The thing though is that even though Mercury is in Virgo, where it's very strong, it's aspecting into the opposite sign, which is Pisces or Mina. and Mercury is debilitated in Pisces. So that's kind of an interesting thing. And the other thing about Virgo for Mercury is that Mercury is not only swa in its own sign, but it's also exalted in Virgo as well. So that's unusual. That's the only case in which a planet is both exalted and in its own sign. So again, Mercury in Virgo is very, very strong, but Mercury's aspect into Pisces is not functioning as well. Yeah. So on September 9th, so that's tomorrow, Mercury goes retrograde or Vakri. And when a planet goes retrograde, it's actually considered to have another type of primary strength in Vedic astrology. So Mercury is already in its own sign. It's going to go retrograde. That means it has two types of primary strength. So Mercury's really kind of on fire starting tomorrow. And you might already be feeling it if you're a Mercury type of person. You know, if your chart is ruled by Mercury, or Mercury is very prominent or dominating in your chart, you're probably already feeling it. And so usually when Mercury goes retrograde, we start to see, or when a planet in general goes retrograde, is that it looks like it's going backwards. It's not actually is. It's an optical illusion, but you'll start to see like reviewing and reworking of things. And especially since this is based in an earth sign, you know, it might be something like reorganizing something, replanning something, going back to the drawing board, you know, rearranging furniture, even things like that, like very simple, practical, mundane things like that. You might be feeling that sort of impulse, you know, during this time. So usually the good thing to do, you know, it's not like you have to get too anxious about this and not do anything. Sometimes you see that in different literature. People talk about, oh, Mercury's going retrograde, you know, don't sign any contracts. Well, the thing is, it's generally a good idea to slow down and give yourself some time and make sure that you review everything, you know, but you kind of want to take your foot off the brake rather than speed through. I find during Mercury retrograde times, I end up doing things twice. Even if I check things like and double check things, somehow like I'll end up forgetting like my phone at home or something, and I go to the store without any money, and I have to go home and get money so I can like pay for my groceries. That sort of thing tends to happen during Mercury retrograde. And again, it's about reviewing and reworking things. Mercury also represents business, communications, travel. So I also tend to find like kind of random people from the past kind of pop up during Mercury retrograde. I don't know. I always kind of know when Mercury retrograde is happening, because all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, that's weird. 3 days in a row I heard from somebody I haven't heard from in years. So at least in my life, that's how Mercury retrograde tends to show itself. But the other thing is Mercury represents the nervous system. And so you really want to protect your nervous system. So that's another reason to slow down, rather than, you again, with Mercury being this strong, it might even feel like there's a bit of compulsive or even obsessive behavior, getting things organized or reorganizing things or something. But you really want to pace yourself and give yourself time, you know, to just rest too, so you don't overdo it and just wear yourself out. So it's important to know when enough is enough and when things are good enough, rather than trying to be a perfectionist, which is, again, a tendency for Mercury-based people or ruled people tend to be that, because they're detail-oriented, especially if they have other aspects like, you know, Mars or Saturn or something on Mercury. I mean, that can like push Mercury even more. So just, you know, keep that in mind during the next month or so. And just an example, actually, Judy Garland, the famous actress and singer, she was a Gemini Lugna rising ascendant, and she had a Mercury, I believe it was retrograde in Swa, so in its own sign, in the first house. And I mean, as famous as she was and as talented as she was, I mean, her nervous system was just, you know, really beaten up by her whole life and the demands on her, and She was like a spinning top, or spinning plates. Like when you have that much Mercury energy, like, jolting through your system, you're going to feel kind of speedy, like you need to take care of all these things. I also think of like whirling dervishes and things like that, like when there's that much Mercury energy, channeling through. So, again, keep that in mind, that this upcoming time, there's going to be a lot of Mercury energy. And we haven't even talked about the other planets, so there's going to be even more, energy added to this. But this is just the background of what's going on in September. And then September 17th, Mercury goes combust, or asta, until September 29th, so for the rest of the month. And so when a planet is combust, it means that it's very close to the sun. Basically, the sun is eclipsing it. And when you can't see a planet, like when Mercury goes combust, what that generally suggests in Vedic astrology is that the qualities of Mercury will not be seen so much on the surface of things, just like you can't see it in the sky, but those qualities will go deeper. So because Mercury is the planet of intellect and reasoning and rationality and that sort of thing, it's very much possible that people are going to get into like overthinking things and analysis paralysis and that sort of thing during this time. So they may not look like, a frantic spinning plate type mercurial person, but internally they may be during this time. And the image that comes to mind with this sort of energy is it's sort of like, about making plans. It's almost like the architect, he goes back and is reworking their plans and, drawing their blueprints and everything. And then starting to lay the foundation for things. And, overthinking things, rethinking things, not quite sure, perhaps even being indecisive, because again, Mercury-based signs tend to be dual in nature. So sometimes they have a hard time making a decision, even though they're ruled by the planet that symbolizes decision making. Yeah. So again, this is the background for September. So I was thinking, okay, who who do I know of? Like, who comes to mind when I think about like a lot of Virgo mercurial energy? Who comes to mind, like in modern day? And the first person that came to mind, who just seems to me, I didn't know her chart. I didn't, I just thought, okay, who represents that in my mind? And I thought of Marie Kondo. You may have heard of her. I think she's worldwide famous at this point, but she's a Japanese woman who wrote books on the Japanese art of tidying, or keeping things organized. Yeah. And, in the last few years, her work has exploded. So her books took off. She's had like TV shows, and she runs her own business. So basically she's a tidying expert. And I thought, oh, okay, so that sounds very Virgonian. And so when I looked at her chart, this is her chart here, the first chart. She was born October 9th, 1984 in Tokyo, Japan. I don't have a birth time, so I spun the chart to have moon at the top, since that's the next sort of closest thing to get, and you can get some information, not as much information, but you can get some information from it. So if you look at her chart, you can see, so the first house is always the top rectangle or a diamond there, and this is a northern Indian style chart. But if we just sort of glance around the chart, what do we see here? Oh, look, in the 7th house, we have Mercury in Virgo. So I was like, okay, so, and she has sun there, so that's gonna, rule. So because the sun is in a mercurial sign and it's with Mercury itself, like the sun is gonna be very mercurial, and the sun represents things like the father and also work, purpose in life, yeah. And then she has the moon aspecting in there. So the moon is the mind. So her mind, she's in her mind, she's going to be like organizing and categorizing, and in her books, I've read her one of her books. She'll even teach you how to roll your socks into like sushi to make them neat and tight. I mean, it's cool. Like, there's a lot to her work that's very helpful. That's why I think her work exploded. But yeah. So she has Mercury and Virgo. Good for her. And then if we look at her chart a little bit more, what else do we have going on that's interesting? Well, she has Jupiter and Mars in the 10th house of work, and her planet. If we look at this is called a Chandra Lagna chart, so the moon rising chart, not her Udaya Lagna or just sign rising chart. This chart is ruled by Pisces, and Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter's gone to the 10th house. So she's going to be a work lady here, and she is very industrious and also prolific from what it seems. And she has Mars there. There's going to be a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of action, that sort of thing, which you'd have to have that sort of nature if you're always like organizing your pencils and your socks, and not just yours, but like you do it professionally and help other people do it. I mean, she's gonna, that takes a lot of mental energy and physical energy to do that, and that's in her 10th house. And then what else does she? And then that energy, that enthusiasm, Mars aspects 4 houses away into the first house of personality and fame, reputation. So, that's why people they know her when they see her, especially in the States, she's recognizable just when you see her. So, and then that energy is also going to be aspecting 7 signs away into the 4th house. So the 4th house represents the home. So she's going to be bringing this like energy to homes, hers and other people's. And then Mars aspects 8 houses away. That's going to hit her 5th house of advice and consulting and teaching. So she teaches and consults with people about how to tidy their homes. So there you go. You can see how that all works well. And then in the 8th house here, she has Saturn and Venus in Libra, which is ruled by Venus. So, and when I see Saturn and Venus together, and Saturn is actually exalted in Libra, and Venus is in its own sign. So this is going to be a very, very strong house. So when I see Saturn and Venus together, Saturn is structure and Venus is the arts. So I always think of like, art that's very like organized and sometimes old. Saturn can also represent like old things or antiquity, that sort of thing. But I've also seen like Saturn and Venus combined can be in people's charts like orthodontists, because what they do is they improve people's aesthetics through restructuring their teeth and their jaw. So that's kind of interesting. The other thing is that this 8th house is the house of like kind of the subconscious mind, and also it can be esoterica and stuff like that. So since she has such a strong 8th house, if you've ever seen her shows, I mean, she actually, before she starts her process of hiding somebody's home, she takes time to connect with the energy of the house, and it's this whole spiritual kind of opening to the process. I guess her background is, she's practices Shintoism and was if I remember correctly, she was a maiden for a Shinto temple for 5 years. So she's a very, deeply spiritual and religious person. And again, Jupiter in its own sign, there's going to be a lot of not just enthusiasm, but probably spirituality as well. So she has this Saturn-Venus combination aspecting onto this Jupiter-Mars combination. So that's going to be a lot of action, a lot of activity related to, organizing things to make them beautiful. Yeah. And then the other thing is this Saturn aspects 10 houses away, which is also going to hit the 5th house of advice and counseling and teaching. So you can see all this here. The other thing is that whenever somebody has a really strong Mercury, like Mercury in the sun sign or something like that, because Mercury represents business and communications and also sales and marketing, they very often go into business for themselves. And she has, at least in the Chandra Lagna here, Mercury in its own sign in the 7th house, which represents independent business. And that's what she's all about these days. So Yeah, so you can learn a lot about her chart, but she's again an embodiment. If you want to like know what a Mercury and Virgo person is like, here we are. Yeah, this is her. And again, Mercury is also writing and speaking and communicating. That's what she does. So all these things that she's known for, writing and being an entrepreneur and a tiding expert, Mercury and Virgo. There you go. Also, the just as Mercury and the Sun are in Hasta, which is a nakshatra lunar mansion, and Hasta is represented, symbolized by the hand. So literally hands-on. She's like moving and organizing things. The other thing about this chart is that she has 4 planets that are either Swa in their own sign or exalted. So she's got some pretty strong planetary energy here. And then if you look at the other side here, on the right side, this is the Samaya chart. So this is the chart that I drew up or just cast at the moment when I was analyzing her chart. And the Samaya chart can be like an update of the energy, of somebody's energy. And what's interesting is like you see a lot of similar things here. So like you have Saturn, you know, it's very strong. It's Swa, it's in its own sign. It's retrograde, so it's got double primary strength. It's aspecting directly across from Venus. So Venus and Saturn are linked, or we call it Sambandha. They're bonded planets here, so that's pretty similar to her original chart. Jupiter's retrograde in its own sign, this time in Pisces, but there you have it. She has very strong Jupiter. Moon is in Taurus, so it's exalted there, strong moon. Sun is in its own sign of Leo, and Mercury is again in its own sign in Virgo. So in her updated chart, she has 5 planets that are Swa or exalted. So again, a very, strong. She's got to have, even though she's tiny, if you've ever seen her, I think she's like 4'8" or something. She's got big energy, this lady here. The other thing that was interesting to me is that you still have this sort of beauty and structure element or kind of thought here. And again, it goes across the 1-7 axis. So 1 being, again, person, personality, fame, celebrity can be. Typically, celebrities have their first house that's very strong. And it goes into her 7th house of independent business. And Venus being in the 7th house, actually, it's the 10th house lord of employment generally. So Venus has gone, the lord of the 10th house has gone 10 houses away, which is what we call Bhavat Bhavam. So she's going to have one consulting project or, after another, which seems to be the case for her. And also Venus happens to be the 5th house lord. So again, consulting, teaching, advising. So she's still doing all that. I thought a little bit interesting, though, is that the Mercury in Virgo, instead of being in the 7th house, it's actually shifted to the 9th house. The 9th house represents things like father, the guru, like the mentor, teacher, and also religion. And again, I think that brings into, with her, this religion piece. Again, she may not be that explicit about it, because it might turn people off. But I think for her, this whole cleaning and tidying thing is very much about getting right with the energy of some divine being or source or something like that. So I think for her, really cleaning is part of her religion, and part of why she does it. But it was interesting too, because she, I think she had this episode. There was some story about how when she first, because she's been like tidying like this forever, and I think she went through when she was, if I remember when I was looking at her chart, when she was growing up, she went through a Mercury period when she was a kid. So from when she was really young, she's been doing like tidying everything, and she, at first when she got into this, she was just throwing everything out, throwing this out, throwing that out. I don't need it, that sort of thing. And she realized that, like, it didn't really, her space didn't really sparkle. I mean, it was very clean and tidy, but it was kind of dull and lifeless or something. And she realized, like, that not only did she need to clean and tidy, but she needed to hold on to things that brought joy. So that's actually a very similar to the whole story for the month of, when there's a really strong Mercury, and because it's the planet of rationality and decision making and stuff like that, people can really be in their head and be kind of disconnected from their feelings and emotions. And sometimes that really needs to be actively or brought in or cultivated, that relationship between the head and the heart. And so she on her own, I guess, through doing this, realized that something was missing when she was just in her head and very efficiently tidying everything up. Like that extra intangible sort of what brings happiness and joy and that sort of thing. You can't really rationalize that. So she came to that herself. And I think she also had this moment where I think she passed out. Maybe that's when she had her epiphany. She like passed out because she was like cleaning so much or something. And when she woke up, she had this epiphany that she really not only need to like declutter, and just scale things down to almost, nothing or whatever, but she needed to hold on to the things that made her heart light up. So there you go, Marie Kondo. We learned a lot from her chart. And so Sun transit. So in the middle of the month, September 16th, Sun will be entering Virgo, joining this SWA retrograde Mercury. And so the Sun always brings energy. So the Sun's going to bring even more energy to this. So it might even exaggerate this like sort of possibly even obsessive compulsive sort of cleaning, reorganizing energy that might be going on, or thinking, planning. And again, the Sun represents purpose, health, father, government, authority. So it might be that something needs to, maybe you end up reorganizing your father's garage or something like that. I was actually just looking a little bit at Queen Elizabeth II's chart, just glanced at it, and also I was trying to get a chart for the UK. I didn't get a good date though, but again, like especially with England having a new prime minister and the Queen, passing away after a 70-year reign, this is going to be very true for England, is that there's going to be massive reorganization across the board through the whole government and, royalty system, authority system. I mean, so like, again, I'm curious. I want to try to look at those charts. Hopefully I can get a good date for the UK, because different people use different dates. But that's an example. There's going to be massive reorganization because the active sort of, head of state and then the monarchy both like shifted and changed within a few weeks of each other. So that's like massive rehauling. So there you go, Mercury and Virgo there with the Sun involved. So again, caution overdoing. Pace yourself, take your time. Because the thing is, the Sun also represents the central nervous system, so the brain and the spinal cord, and Mercury represents the peripheral nervous system. So the whole nervous system can be on overload, again, because all this energy is sort of conglomerating in Virgo. Yeah, so watch yourself. And then Venus. So Venus starts to enter the picture here. On September 15th, Venus goes combust or asta. So it's also going to be eclipsed by the Sun. And this is going to be until December 1st. That's a very long time. So Venusian qualities will be less apparent on the surface, like I mentioned for Mercury, but they will be deeper. So things like socialization and creativity might be internal, but may not be outwardly expressed. Just so you know too, when Venus is combust, it's generally not a great time to get into a relationship. If that's something you're considering, definitely sort of take it easy there. Or if you're in a relationship, there might be a situation where you don't see your partner for a while. Maybe they go on a trip, or for example, maybe it's your spouse or something whose father has some issues, health issues, and the spouse needs to go off for a while to help the father and help them, organize their medications or their house or something because they're not able to do it. Like that's how this could play out. So keep that in mind. But again, Venus is going to be combust even after it moves out of Virgo until December 1st. So you literally may not see, your partner, or less so during this time. And then on September 24th, Venus enters Virgo, so it's going to join the party, and it's going to be there until October 18th, so about almost a month. And Venus is, unlike Mercury, which is exalted in Virgo, Venus is debilitated in Virgo. So it's going to be in a weaker position. So it's not going to be as, enlivening, or because Venus is a beneficial planet. So the outward picturing of Venus and Venus's soothing balm energy and compassion and friendliness and diplomacy and all that, you're not going to see it as much during this time because of this debilitation and also it being combust. If I remember correctly, the last time Venus went combust, like literally the United States was on fire because there were all these protests going on. I think that's when the Black Lives Matter issue was really kind of coming to a head, and like literally there were these revolts and fire and all these sorts of like chaotic things going on in cities across the country, and that's the last time I believe Venus was combust. So Venus, when Venus disappears, we really seem to feel it. So yeah, keep that in mind as well. But with Venus being in Virgo, even though it's debilitated there, it's exalted in Pisces. So, and luckily Venus is friendly to Mercury, so Venus may not be as strong in Virgo, but there's some support there, but it should be helping whatever's going on in Pisces, which is directly across from Virgo. So keep that in mind. Even though all the planets are conglomerating in Virgo, you also have to keep in mind that all these planets are aspecting directly into Pisces as well. So just because of planets are moving there, you got to make sure you're watching like everywhere that their energy is beaming. So both Venus and Mercury are going to be in an exaggerated condition, but since they're going to be in Virgo and Mercury's there, again, Mercury's going to dominate the situation. So Venus, though, should bring some aspect of the arts and sociability, and again, this heart-based feeling into this more sort of rational, logical, mercurial paradigm. Yeah. So Venus, the reason why I brought this up is just to kind of give you another person who embodies another aspect of what's going on in the sky. So Venus combust. This is the birth chart of Temple Grandin. You may have heard of her. She's a scientist and academic and was an animal behaviorist, or is an animal behaviorist. So she's famous because she's autistic, and she has Venus combust, like very combust, within a degree or so of the sun. So it's completely toast. And she was always sort of an odd character. Nobody really knew what to do with her. I mean, she was born in 1947, so before autism was even really known about or talked about or whatever. They had to work with her. She doesn't like to really be around people because she gets overwhelmed and stuff like that. But what she did with her life is she really has a lot of compassion for animals who are, going to slaughter. And so she created these more humane systems, physical systems, to help the cows so they don't get as stressed and as anxious. I mean, how sweet is that? That's pretty amazing. So you can see her chart here. Her birth chart is on the left. She was born August 29th, 1947, 14:30 in the afternoon, Eastern Standard Time in Boston, Massachusetts. And the thing is, this whole, look at this, Mercury, Sun, Venus all together. And Venus and Mercury for her are both combust. And this is all in her 10th house of work. The Sun here is in its own sign. So she's going to have a very strong drive for work and her purpose in life. And then she's got Mercury and Venus combust, so those are definitely working. I mean, she had to do all the designing, very creative stuff here. very innovative, and again, very compassionate, that she had such a heart for animals. So we see that here. And also her, again, she was going to be seen as an odd person. I mean, just the way she walked and talked, it was going to be unusual. So she's got K2 and Rahu across the 1-7 axis here. So, with K2 in the first house of personality and the way people see you and fame and stuff like that, she was going to, that's kind of her energy in her chart. She's going to be a little bit odd, but again, creative, brilliant, compassionate, it's all there. And then I did a semi-hour update chart for her. And you get a lot of the same stuff. Like, so you get Rahu and Ketu again in the 1-7 axis here. So that's similar. You have Mars in the second house, but it's directly beaming into the 8th house, which is where it's at in her birth chart. You have Venus and Sun again together in Leo, so that hasn't changed much. That's in her 5th house of, again, consulting, teaching, advising, which is what she does. She's got this massive 10th house. She has Saturn retrograde swa in Capricorn, so she's a worker, workaholic probably. She's got that going on, so her 10th house is still humongous. And then she has Jupiter retrograde in its own sign in the 12th house, and she had Jupiter in the 12th house in her natal chart. So it's interesting how when you see some IR update charts, like you can still see that some of the base energies, or what we would call drid karmas, or like fixed karmas, like some of them really you can see, but it looks like for her though too, like things have smoothed out, which I, as far as I understand, have in her life, because her first part of her life must have been like completely rough. I mean, and now she's kind of found her groove, so good for her. So that's Temple Grandin. And then moon transits, so in September. So on September 10th, so this weekend, there's going to be a full moon in Aquarius or Kumbh. The moon is neutral in Saturn signs. It's going to be in the nakshatra or lunar mansion of Purva Bhadrapada. So the symbol of this lunar mansion or nakshatra is the front legs of a funeral cot. So, especially since this is Vedic astrology from India, a funeral cot usually means like a fire for cremation, that sort of thing. So the energy of this sign can be like fire, heat, combustion, even things like death can be related to this nakshatra. Also, another symbol for this nakshatra is a person with two faces. So this could be somebody considering two realities. It could also be in a more negative context, depending on what's there in the sign. Somebody who is double-faced or two-faced, like in a negative context, you can't really tell what they're really about. And so there can be like negative feelings related to this nakshatra, fear, pain, regret, sadness, anger. So, and especially with full moons, like usually emotions run high. It's almost like a tide is high, emotional tide is high. So it looks like, this weekend there may be quite a bit. And again, I'm just thinking about the Queen of England again. I mean, it was, not that I have a deep connection or whatever with her. I don't live in England. I've never been to England. But just reading her, just the announcement of her passing, like tears came to my eyes. I can only imagine like what England's going through, people of England are going through right now, with the new PM and then the transition. I mean, so I'm sure, England's feeling this way. So definitely things are coming to a head over there. And then there's going to be, and so on a more personal level though, not just sort of a national level, but on a personal level, again, this kind of fits in with this idea that maybe something happens with an authority figure, whether it's a father or teacher, mentor, boss, somebody, looks like there may be trouble going on there, and a lot of just logistical things have to be taken care of. So that's the Mercury piece. And so I don't know if you've ever had somebody pass away, but I have. Somebody I was close to, and there's just so much to do. I mean, it's sort of mind-boggling, because like you're feeling the way you feel and you don't feel like doing anything. But there's so many logistical things to take care of. Although sometimes you kind of feel like, well, at least there's something physical and tangible I can do, other than just kind of sit here and stew in my feelings. But there's just like so much when somebody passes away. It's just, overwhelming. So that maybe, and you just kind of are in survival mode to get it all done, or get as much done as you are capable of, being, not in a very highly functional state. So it's ironic that way. But so that may be part of what's going on. And then September 25th, there's going to be a new moon in Virgo. So this is when the moon is joining the party in Virgo. And a new moon, again, it's a fresh start, right? Planting new seeds. So whatever is being dealt with in the first couple of weeks here of September, towards the end of the month, there's going to be this, like, where do we go from here type energy. And the moon is friendly, in a mercurial sign, so that's good. It's helpful. And the nakshatra the new moon is going to happen is called Uttara Falguni. The symbol of this is like the bed or the hammock, or a hammock. So comfort, kindness, marital love, wealth. Like, not everybody has a bed. Some people sleep on a mat or a floor. But there's a gentler, kinder energy with the new moon coming at the end of September. So whatever might be sort of unfortunately blowing up, and all the recon that has to happen at the beginning of the month, the end of the month will be a time to start to look forward a little bit, and kind of the edge of whatever might be blowing up in the beginning of the month should start to fade and shift into something a little nicer and more palatable. So that's the moon. But the next day after this new moon, so there's still a little rock and roll here. The 26th and 27th of September, there's going to be a planetary war between Mercury and Venus. So head and heart, they're literally going to, and planetary war means when two true planets, so that means like not the sun, not the moon, not Rahu and Ketu, but the other 5 planets, true planets that you see in the sky as a planet, not rather than like a luminary, because the sun is a star and the moon is a moon, and Rahu and Ketu are shadow planets that they don't actually exist, they're just calculations. But like Mercury is rationality and Venus is love. I mean, head and heart, like boom, 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 like head to head at the end of the month. So, I think it's going to be like this shift of getting out of whatever is sort of generating this urgency to get things organized and squared away in the beginning of the month. There's going to be this sort of tug of war at the end of the month between, like, do we stay in this mental state, rational, hyper-rational state, or where's our heart in all this? Kind of like with Marie Kondo when she, like, passed out or something, and she woke up and she's like, yeah, my space is clean, clean and tidy. I mean, there's not a speck of dirt, but do I actually enjoy living here? Do I feel good? Do I, do my eyes receive like this sort of intangible, personal, beauty or upliftment, things you can't really put your hands on. So there's going to be that going on. Yeah. And so I just, this chart is the exact moment when Venus and Mercury are like the exact same degree. So they're going to be at 2 degrees 37 at this particular time. I didn't write it down. But it's just interesting because at this particular moment, in this particular chart, so if you were like a Sagittarius rising, this is going to happen in your, along your 4-10 axis. So 4 is home and ancestors. Right, so again, getting back to family here, and then the 10th house is work and employment. So work and home are going to be affected by all this energy for Sagittarius rising people. And again, moon also represents mother, sun represents father, so parental so there does seem to be more, because of what the planets represent and where they're at. Not just work is going to be affected, but family relationships especially. So, what did I write over here? So, sudden epiphany or communication. So, maybe not just an epiphany, but maybe you get a letter, or maybe you're cleaning out the garage or something, and like you see an old photograph related to family patterns and ancestors. Something like that might pop up. But it's an opportunity really to release old thought patterns and beliefs and more fully live in the heart space. So maybe you've inherited, or somebody's inherited, like, again, getting back to the Queen, since that's a fresh example, she had an amazing legacy in a lot of ways. Like, even the headlines are talking about, she brought 70 years of stability to England. But, wow, Prince Charles, or King Charles as of tomorrow, he's got a lot to live up to, because she was just so dominating for so long. I mean, that's a lot there's a lot of shift and change, and it's kind of like, which of those traditions that she imposed do we keep? Because it is an opportunity to shift if things seem like they've, been outgrown or outmoded or something like that. Which of these things do we keep, and which of these things do we let go of, because they don't really serve anymore. And just to be more relevant for today, because sometimes people, like, their thought processes and habits or whatever, they worked at a certain time and a place, but they're not really universal or generalizable. I was just watching this show yesterday on pizza making. Like, top chefs who are master pizza makers, and there's this woman in Minnesota, what's her name, Ann Kim, I think. So she was Korean born, but immigrated very young to the United States, and her parents didn't speak English, and there's this whole thing about she was ashamed of her parents and all this sort of thing, and she went to an Ivy League school and got educated, but she kind of rebelled against this whole, because her parents came from a situation where they lived through war and all this sort of thing, and so they wanted her to do something obviously very practical, but she wanted to get into the theater, and she did, and there's this whole, they said they were going to disown her and all sorts of, eventually they all made up, and they all, are together now, but and then after the theater, she realized after a while that she was only going to get stereotype parts as an Asian woman, and so then she's like, what am I going to do now? And then she ended up going back to her roots of cooking, making kimchi with her mother and grandmother, and that's what she does, is she makes pizza, but she puts kimchi on the pizza, so it's like this whole innovative thing, but going back to her roots, so what does she keep? Do you just throw the baby out with the bathwater or not? But it takes time to sift through these thoughts and feelings and beliefs. Are these beliefs mine, or did I just inherit them? Do I keep them? Do I slip them aside? So there's all that potentially going on here, But at the end of the day, at the end of this process, even though there's going to be potentially some rock and roll here, the highest energy of all this is that the end result is that whoever all of us, live in a more authentic space that serves not just our mind, but our heart and our spirit as well. So what else did I write? Patterns may be related to beliefs held by parents and how they play out in the realm of work and relations. Okay, so this woman, this Korean American woman I mentioned, that's an example, of how things can play out. And so I have another chart here. This is the birth chart of Andrea Bocelli, who's an Italian opera singer. And I saw a movie about him this last month, and so for some reason when I was watching the movie, I was like, oh, what's his chart look like? So he's interesting. He was actually had low vision for a long time, and then when he was 12, he was in a football accident and then lost his sight completely, and then became eventually a famous Italian tenor opera singer. But I was just thinking of his chart, so lo and behold, he was born September 22nd, 1958, 5:15 in the morning at Pisa, Italy. If you look at his chart, though, assuming this is correct, he's got Venus and Mercury together. So they're almost a degree apart. They just came out of planetary war. So these planets are just like a day or two. If you push back his chart a day or two, they're exactly on top of each other. So he's still got remnants of this sort of Venus Mercury, battling going on with him. And these are in Leo. The sun happens to be in Virgo. So because sun's in Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury's in Leo, which is ruled by the sun, there's actually a parivartana, or exchange of houses. So you can actually shift sun to the first house and Mercury to the second house. And so you're going to have Mercury again in Virgo. So I was just like, wow, okay. I always kind of scratch my head. I'm just like, wow, it's amazing how this all kind of comes together. Again, I'm not like really doing any deep research here. I just sort of get these intuitive hits, like, oh, look at their chart. And I'm like, oh, look, it's what's going on in the sky right now. It's current sky pattern. So his chart's interesting. So he also basically has this like Mercury and Virgo energy, which he would need, because to do that sort of, really technical operatic singing, he's got to be like on it every day. And again, I don't know. I was trying to find some information about his training, and I don't know how much of the movie was correct, but like in this movie, he found this teacher eventually who just was like, the name of the movie I think was called The Music of Silence or something like that, because this teacher was just like, to save your voice you need to basically not talk. Like you have to mostly be silent except when you're opera singing, was kind of the message. So I was like, wow, I mean, that's a discipline, almost like a monk or something like that, getting back to spirituality. But he had to like work and work and work to really, I mean, I guess he had some natural ability, but this teacher, at least in the movie, just really worked him, I mean, like an athlete. And also what's interesting in his chart, he's got Saturn in the 4th house and Mars in the 10th, which they're basically, again, in this deep linkage. And when you have Saturn and Mars together, that's like an athlete. So, and Mars is aspecting 4 houses away into the 1st house. So Mars is bringing this energy to the 1st house. And Saturn is also aspecting into the 1st house. So this kind of like, when you get all this, all these arrows encircled and you see it's all like, 4th house of ancestry and classical stuff, and 10th house of work, 1st house of like fame, personality, and personal face and head and body, and then the 2nd house of oration. Here you go. And you've got this perfectionist attitude with the Mercury and Virgo by way of parivartana. This is how it all goes down. And then also in his chart, it's interesting because he has Jupiter, which is oration, in the 3rd house of classical arts and training. So yeah, so very interesting. And then I was trying to find the date when he had the football accident and lost his sight. I don't know, I was just looking for dates and stuff like that. And it happened, I couldn't find an exact date. They just said like at the age of 12. So I just like, I was looking at some date in September 26th, and then I just flipped the year to 1970, which is when he would have been 12. So it almost like it was almost like a retrograde Samaya chart or something like that. But look at what happened. Like it popped up as Leo also rising, and you have Mars and Mercury in the same degree in the 1st house with K2. So there's a planetary war going on between Mars and Mercury in his 1st house. Again, I don't know if this is the exact date, but and they're fast-moving planets, but K2 was there. So K2 was probably in his 1st house. K2 represents like unexpected, strange accidents and stuff like that. Mars represents accidents, injuries, and blood. So you have some planetary war going here with this like added kind of, unusual aspect. The sun is again in the 2nd house, same, ding, ding, ding. You have Jupiter again in the 3rd house with Venus. Venus, is also the arts. So you have Jupiter and Venus, two benefic planets in the third house of classical arts, and they happen to be in Venus's sign. So hello, this guy's going to be all about, singing and classical training, arts of classical nature. You also have Moon in the 12th house, which is directly aspecting where it was in his natal chart. Moon is in his 6th house in the natal chart. So again, there's, again, I'm always amazed by this, but this is basically there was a lot of reproduction of his natal chart when he was about 12 years old, which makes sense because Jupiter takes 12 years to go around the whole chart. So at age 12, he's going to have a Jupiter return. But Mars and Mercury, again, were there. Sun was there. Again, if this happened within about a month of September 26, 1970, then this chart is about when he had the accident. And they said that the accident would happen when he got hit in the head, is that it created a brain hemorrhage. So the sun represents brain, Mars represents hemorrhage, football accident, some weird freak thing, K2, it's all there in this retroactive semi-art chart, I guess. So more embodiments. If you're into Italian singing, he represents, Andrea Bocelli represents also Mercury and Virgo, and also the planetary war. So, he struggled a lot. The other thing is that Venus and Mercury, in his chart, his natal chart, Mercury's going to be Lord of the 2nd house, which is head, face, neck, and it also represents the 11th house, and Venus represents the 3rd house. So basically, these planets are representing a lot of potential issues with anatomy above the neck, essentially. So like his eyes, and the sun represent eyes. So the sun, also involved in all this. You could see how that could happen. That he had issues with his eyes, and then there was one final accident where it was just unfortunately eliminated completely. So there you have Andrea Bocelli. So on a personal level, the thing you probably want to find out, if you don't know already, is which house or axis is Virgo or Kanya in your chart, especially over the next month. So if Virgo is in the 6-12 axis for your chart, the 6th house represents debts and enemies, and the 12th house represents losses and isolation. So there may be this sort of like reorganizing, cleaning up, type stuff going on in those areas of life. If Virgo's on the 5-11 axis, the 5th house represents children, creativity, and also advising, like I mentioned. And the 11th house represents groups and income. So all this energy could be happening along this axis. If Virgo's in 4 or 10, that's the home career axis. If Virgo's in 3 or 9, 3 is siblings and communication, fine arts as well, classical arts, and trades. And then also the 9th house is father, religion, higher education. So there you go. If Virgo's in the 2nd or 8th house, on that axis, the 2nd house represents family of origin and beginnings, and the 8th house represents spouses, family, and endings. If Virgo's on the 1-7 axis, the 1st house represents self and health, and the 7th house represents relationships and independent business. So again, Virgo, and don't forget Pisces. I mentioned Pisces because again, it's easy to just focus on Virgo because that's where all the planets are heading, but all those planets are directly beaming their light into Pisces as well. That's why it's important to look at the axis, not just Virgo, the Virgo house, for September. So there you go, planetary shifts and changes over the next month. I hope you have found this helpful and interesting, and I hope it helps you as you move through your life in the next few weeks. Until the next one, take care. Bye-bye.